Hello, welcome to the Edmunds CarCast podcast. I'm Matt, the moderator, DeAndrew, here with Alistair Weaver. Hello.
Hello, Matt. How are you?
You look in a daze.
I was in a daze. I just got, like I was just, when we started, I was just looking at my Slack messages. Terrible. Just, like, thing is, every day, especially when you work in automotive and, like you've got cars and logistics and everything moving around, like, I feel like, 100 times a day, something like happens on my Slack channel. I'm like, oh, okay.
You
Another
can't.
problem,
You
another
have
problem to
to.
solve.
You have to put your real job aside for a few minutes to do the
This is like my little bit of light relief.
Yeah.
I'm kind of most of the time I'm dealing with problems that I'm a dad, and this is my vacation. So
Yeah. A little hour, 45 minutes to an hour a week where you get
I
to
just get to talk to you, Matt,
just,
and
yeah, just to hang out and talk. Um, I've noticed some interesting things in the automotive news. We saw the Acura ZDX EV, which has been out for a couple of years, just like 2 years, is going to be ending pretty soon, and a couple of Lexus models. So
it's been out for 1 year. The ZDX. I mean, this is it's kind of an interesting twist on the whole EV thing. I mean, the ZDX was the Acura version of the Honda Prologue, which it was in itself the Honda version of the Chevy Blazer and all the GM products that have spun off that. So 1 year, and I think it's like less than 20,000 units later. They are pulling the plug, which they've probably done enough to honor the GM deal, whatever that looked like on paper. And now it's like, okay, we're done with that, and we're gonna move on. And a lot of people say, well, why have they why are they pulling the plug now? Because they spent a lot of money. I mean, they did a concept car. I think there was at
yeah,
Pebble Beach at Monterey Car Week. They've, all the marketing money, all the everything that goes into launching a vehicle today. You run it for 1 year and 19,000 units, and then you're done. And it's interesting. Is this a prelude, if you pardon the pun? Is this a prelude to more to come? What other EVs are going to be cancelled as we go forward? I mean, we've already seen it with the Ram electric truck. Now we're seeing it with the ZDX. Are we going to start reversing out a lot of cars, which frankly, they've spent a lot of money. This is a massive financial hit for Acura. There's no way it's not.
it kind of wonder how much of thought went into the whole life cycle of this. I think they ended it a little bit early, but they were already developing their standalone, their own proprietary EV platform, which I think they talked about at Monterey Car Week. They
Yeah,
did
that was a CES this year. That was debuted. Yeah, the Consumer
yeah,
Electronics Show. But and they yeah, that's Honda going its own way with EVs. The whole GM thing seems to have been. I think the GM thing was about like we need to get a toe in the market. You need to turn up at a Honda and Acura dealer and see an EV. We need to be in the game, and we need to take those learnings. And GM needed, it was probably a good deal for GM that they could get to, cover off some of the capacity and
yeah.
batteries and everything else. And so it probably made a lot of sense at the time. And, Honda's done pretty well selling the Prologue, but I think it's sold volume because it's pushed them. And we talked about it before on the show. If you can rent one or lease one at $220 a month, well, what a surprise that they sell.
Well, I think you're right in that Honda and Acura needed to have an EV on the lot so people can start thinking about them as an EV option. And even moving the Prologue, maybe even the ZDX at a loss, probably got people onto the dealer lots or into a few cars to say Honda and Acura does do an EV, and maybe also got them some feedback as to what their own platform should be like. Not to mention everything else, how to roll it out, how to market it, just how to target that audience that might be EV ready, Honda's EV ready audience. Um, so experimenting with that and sharing some of that cost with GM, probably not a bad idea.
Yeah, and I think what they probably tended to do a lot of time, sell to Honda customers and Acura customers that, maybe there's not such a, I don't have the data, but the feeling that, you can communicate to that customer base that you too have an EV. The dealers get up to speed with what it's like to sell an EV. They get the infrastructure in place. So
Yeah.
there's probably a lot of good stuff there. But I mean, did they write the business model for it to last 1 year, sell 19,000 units and be done? No.
No.
This at the
But
very least, one would have expected it to run for 3 or 4 years. So
I mean, it could be worse. It could be a Dodge Charger EV.
yeah, well, that's another example. I mean, the Ram truck's gone. Charger EV. I think they're only now selling the Scat Pack version. What happens? What happens down the line? How committed are you? It's difficult because I don't think a lot of people understand. It's like you can't just turn these things on and off. You have to commit to things like batteries and the supplier chain for years out. So I was talking to a very senior executive from an OEM at Car Week, and this was kind of off the record, but he was saying that like we've got to commit to batteries now for the next 4 years, and we just don't know. We
Yeah.
just have no idea like how many we're going to sell. It's not just EVs; it's same with gas cars and everything else. But that's why you get into these kind of weird worlds where certain cars have got massive incentives attached to them because everybody has to take a punt on how many they're going to sell. And then your ability to scale production up and down is pretty modest.
Yeah.
It's a rubbish business. I mean, the car industry is just a rubbish business.
It kind of is. And I don't know. I guess we just keep talking about it for some reason. I don't know, we kind of enjoy it, I guess. Yeah, we enjoy
It's
it.
you look at like big used car retailers, and obviously Edmunds is owned by CarMax, and this is public domain, and everybody thinks, oh, you make a fortune on every used car, and you're making a couple of grand profit. It's not, this is
Yeah.
not, this is not fashion. You're not making like there's not like a threefold markup on it.
What I am curious about, and this is a little, you know, selfish on my part, but uh the end of this month, the EV tax credits are gone. Things are going to start to level out price wise, on EV compared to gas engine cars. EV is probably more expensive because they're more expensive to make these days. Will used EV prices go up in value? And obviously, there's a bunch of us that lost our butts on EV purchases. So I don't think we'll
Not
recoup all of it, but I wonder if used EVs will go up a little bit. Uh,
so
after
there's an argument
after
that
the
there is
tax.
an argument that used car prices generally could rise as the tariff thing really kicks in. Everybody's like the new car prices are arriving by stealth at the moment. So there is an argument that used car prices will go up, but only really if consumers can stomach the cost. Cars are already really expensive.
Yeah,
And then used cars are also expensive. Interest rates obviously have come down a little bit. That might help. But you've just got to have a market for these cars. So, and yeah, maybe if you can't lease, I mean, if you can lease a new car at $200 a month, why would you buy a used one? It doesn't really make a lot of sense. So, will we see EVs creep up, or will we just see people not buying them full stop?
yeah,
I mean, there's a lot still to be worked out. We're like a few days away from the end of the tax credit. If you talk to GM, I was spending time with their execs, they were basically saying, yeah, you'll get to October, it'll fall off a cliff, but then when you look at the economic models of any similar situation, it then slowly starts to climb again, and eventually you climb beyond where you were, and that's kind of the nature of capitalism. But we'll see. I think there's a lot of
yeah.
people going to lose a lot of money in the meantime. Um,
I mean, certainly the car companies are looking at their EV inventory and saying, we still need to sell cars. So if in October things change, tax credits gone, tariffs are in place, things like that. We need to still find ways to sell these cars,
Correct, and
especially
that's
the ones that are already made or in the process of being made. I mean, sure, you can halt production, slow things down, but that affects, a year from now. It doesn't affect,
yeah,
100 cars on a dealer lot.
and that's the problem, and that's the prologue argument that we talked about previously. $220 a month, yeah, you can say people are going to lease them. Happy days. Take away the tax credit, $450 a month. Are you going to lease a prologue for $450 a month? Are you going to buy a CRV? You're going to buy a CRV.
Yeah.
So then, what do you do if you're Honda? You've got a choice. You either then have to further incentivize the prologue to shift them, because you've done a deal with GM and you've got certain units that you've got to hit. So then do you just put more money against it? So you bring the lease deal down to 300 or whatever price you feel you can actually shift the metal. But
Right.
all you're doing is basically supporting your dealers who are also probably making no money, and it's just a bad business. So
Yeah,
it
I mean, I think the car companies would look at it and go, we would prefer to make less money or zero money on our inventory than not sell it, lose it, and get stuck with a bunch of cars.
yeah, I mean this was if you look at where Dodge or Stellantis got into a load of trouble. Last time I looked on the Stellantis website, on the Dodge website, you want a Hellcat Charger from 2024, 2023 even. You're like, there's a lot still out there, and these cars are just sitting around. So
Yeah.
you've got to shift the metal. So that's where I think it gets really tough. So it's going to be an interesting few months, and obviously some brands are better prepared to weather the storm than others. It's
Yeah.
Nissan are in a, Nissan also like the Aria. I mean, Arias have been so cheap recently on the lease deal, but that's gone. And the Aria is actually like a decent car, but they were having to incentivize it so much just to shift them. Because, it's not like our favorite EV. But if you say, look, would you like an Aria for like 180 bucks a month? Well, actually, the whole proposition changes. And actually, for 180 bucks a month, it's a very nice car. Thank you very much. Anyway, that's dead.
I,
So, that's the
yeah,
other
you
one.
already forgot about that car.
The Aria's gone.
It just didn't get any attention. It
Well,
just didn't get.
where I think we are going to see a shift, and which I think potentially swings the market back a bit. We are seeing more cheaper EVs. We've just driven the Nissan Leaf, which is a huge improvement over the old one, which had been around since God was a lad. Now you've got Equinox EV. We're going to have cheaper. There's going to be cheaper Teslas. There's going to be a bunch of stuff hitting the market that's going to be hopefully somewhere in the 30s. And so even without
Yeah.
these big tax incentives, that's if the average transaction price of a car is 50 grand, if you've got a good EV in the 30s, then it's got a chance.
And but is the pitch for the $30,000 EV going to be better than the Nissan Sentra, whatever, the new 30,
Yeah, which is also looks quite nice,
which
quite a
is
step forward.
nice and, you know, probably sorted out and
Yeah.
reliable because it's
Or a used or like a 2-year-old RAV4 or Honda CRV or something like
right.
that. Yeah, that's the decision. I mean, for me, an EV for a lot of people will be a great second car.
Yeah.
But it's a lot of money for a second car. I mean, most families in the US are two-car households. It's kind of a lifestyle thing, isn't it? So yeah, an EV plus a gas car is actually probably for a lot of people makes sense. You have your long distance car and then your kind of commuting car, your school run car, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
But that's got to be at a price point that makes sense. I mean, I was talking to somebody the other day and they're like, well, would you get like a used EV? And I was like, sure, if it's like your second car at 20 grand, if you can get a Model 3 with, 40,000 miles for like low 20s, go for it.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Um, all right, let's turn the page for a second. We talked in the past couple of weeks about uh, the German big three and the future of them, new design styles, new platforms coming out, refresh across the board. And now it looks like we're starting to see something like that come from Lexus because Lexus hasn't really announced all the new cars, but they did announce the the ending of several of their cars. The Lexus LS, their flagship sedan, which I always thought was a beautiful car, by the way. I always liked the LS.
Yeah, I think it's kind of. I mean, no, I mean, there's only Mercedes really has ever sold. The S class. If you want a default luxury sedan, you buy an S class. BMW's always struggled to sell a 7 Series. Audi's always struggled to sell the AA. Like globally, it's not even a US thing. Like globally, nobody else. The S class outperforms everybody else. And they just own that market. But yeah, the LS, like you forget that was the car that launched Lexus, that it came along in what, 89 or something? Was it late 80s?
Yeah.
And that was groundbreaking at the time. That was seen as like a real step forward. When did the LS launch? Was that 89? I'm going to Google it as we talk. No, 90. Yeah, no, January. God, I'm good, aren't I? January 1989. Yeah,
Okay.
I remember because my uncle bought one of the first ones. This was in Northern England, and because it was like it had BMWs, and this was something different, and it had all these gadgets, and it was this, and it was that. And the local car dealer decided that he'd have his little signature thing, and so supplied it with gold badges. So I
Hmm.
remember it was a black car with gold badges. Which look, if you want like nouveau riche, you might as well just have like it's the equivalent like the Gucci sweatshirt with Gucci written on you. It's like, yeah, it was a bit naff, but I do remember it being a really good car.
So the LS is going to go out with a special edition, and then I guess it's going to end in a year. Um, and the IS, right,
Yeah,
which I also like, it's kind of a 3 Series fighter.
yeah, that's always a very pretty car. Yeah.
The ISF was a great little performer. We had one. We had like a long-term loaner. I say we, it was just like me and Adam Carolla like kind of shared this thing for a while. Um, I took it on Laguna Seca and I jumped the corkscrew with it. But I straightened that arrow right out. Just
It's
oh, with that car. Yeah, got black flagged for that. Oops, my bad. But I guess we're making way for some new things from Lexus.
Yeah, I mean it's just SUVs, isn't it? They're not, they're very lukewarm into EVs as well. Um,
Well,
and then
Toyota,
and that
right? And they're all in on hybrid. They love their
they're all
hybrid.
in on hybrid. Obviously got the new supercar, the LFR, which I had a good look at the prototype at Goodwood Festival of Speed. That's on its way. That's going to be a chunk of change, but that's going to be an exciting car.
That's going to be a hybrid as well, right?
That's going to be hybrid. I mean, obviously Lexus is Toyota, and I think it's going to be SUVs, hybrids, plus this sports car as a kind of an image leader. But like a used LS, because they don't hold their value that well. Like a used LS would be just a really nice way to travel.
Um, just looking at the Lexus website, I'm looking at this the LC. I don't know how long the LC is going to be around. It's the
It's
two
probably got
door.
another year, right? Can't
Yeah. And anyway, I'm driving one next week because whenever you get a chance to drive one, you should because it's gorgeous and it has a wonderful V8 sound and it's just a nice car.
I drove the convertible for the first time. We had one down at the track. I'm not even sure why we had it in, to be honest. But I just had to spend some time, and it's just that's again is like a bit of a kind of thinking. It flies massively under the radar, but it's such a pretty car.
Yeah.
The coupe particularly would just be, if you don't need, rear seats and everything else. I remember like the control interface is a bit rubbish and things like that, but just the noise and the look, and I really like the idea of a kind of it's like thinking person's car, isn't it? It's like, it doesn't drive as well as a 911 or something, but it's super pretty and just as a proper, fast, comfortable GT. It's cool.
I mean, it's Lexus's version of the Mercedes SL,
Yeah, I think that's fair.
right?
But
And
less obvious.
yeah. But it has a good sound. It's got great style to it. There's a few things on it that are a little dated now, and you're right. The trackpad is almost a deal killer for me. I just can't stand the little trackpad interface. But yeah, it's a gorgeous car. I'm gonna get one next week. Drive it for a little while.
I
Probably.
was just looking here, like, like a 2018, like an admitted an early car, like 27,000 miles, 66 grand. There are a lot of these, if you can get a good deal on one, they're a very nice way to go around.
Yeah.
I'm a bit of a fan of I mean, Lexus is one of those cars that it rarely wins one of our group tests. It's rarely. We like the GX. We bought a GX. We like the TX, isn't it? Which is the Grand Highlander with a slightly tarted up interior. They rarely they rarely like win the group test. They're rarely outstanding, but they're just they've got that Toyota build quality. There's they're a nice easy car to live with. They're a very kind of like low effort car.
But but predictable. Like you're going to get something good quality. You're going to get something well built. You're going to get a nice car. It's just like it's consistently like a 7 or 8 out of 10. And it's always that way. And you're always looking for something that's like a 9 or a 10 out of 10. But it's you're right. It's always one of those cars that can rank number two in a test. Maybe
Yeah, it's
in a
just.
test. Like it always will do well.
And recently, they started doing. It almost feels a bit like what Alpina was doing in BMW. Like they do the TX. I think it's the TX isn't a Grand Highlander version. And all it really done is taken the Toyota, and it's got a bit of a nicer key, and the leather's marginally better. And you've got to buy into that to choose it. The GX is interesting, and that's a cool. We own one, and gets a mixed reception in our team. There's kind of we got the off-road version of it, and I took it up to Sequoia, and it was great. And I think it's going to be a really good car if you want to go skiing in the winter. But it's got a bit of a mixed press in our team. It's not that spacious. The fuel consumption is terrible. It's a bit hit and miss, but it looks cool. I mean, again, it's like Land Rover Defender or Lexus GX, and I think that Toyota reputation for quality, reliability, I think that's what sort of gets it across the line. I know that's a car that actually they can't build fast enough. If you look at Toyota, we've got Grand Highlander, Lexus GX. There's a ton of cars that
Yeah.
they under they actually could have built more of.
And then the new supercar, the LFA replacement. The LFA, absolutely wonderful, amazing sound, 10 cylinder.
Do you know what? I drove
That's
one.
great.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I did the original launch of it. I went around the Nürburgring in it and everything else. This is like donkeys years ago, and it's become this cult car that they're all worth millions of dollars and everything
Yeah.
else. And I remember, apart from the engine, which is off the scale, the V10, the rest of it, I just remember like at the time, everybody was a bit like, it's all right, but it's not like epic. And
What
somehow it's developed this incredible reputation. Probably didn't build money because it sounds unbelievable. And I got taken around the Nürburgring Nordschleife with their test driver who spoke not a word of English at very high speed. And, when he starts providing quite serious correction, you're like, oh, you're trying harder than the average press run here. And you're the only one in a race suit. And he was exciting and it's a cool car, but I don't get why they're worth as much as they are.
it's
I don't understand why they're worth millions of dollars.
the way like a GTR caught on, like people wanted a Japanese supercar, and the sound is fantastic. It was a good performer, but also it was kind of a flawless in a sense. Like I did track days with it. I drove several of them, and the engineers were just standing there. They're like, they didn't want to check the tire pressure. They're like, we don't have to. It's a Lexus. That was what they kept saying to me. I was like, we just did a bunch of laps. You need to check anything? They're like, nope, it's a Lexus. Like, I was like, you don't want to check the tire pressure, and it was nitrogen filled or whatever. They're like, no, it's a Lexus. I'm like, okay, guys, I got it. They're like, it's flawless. And like that was their thing. And you jump into so many like supercars, if you will, similar price range cars, $500,000 cars or whatever it was when it came out, and you get this carbon fiber thing that's rough and the seats are terrible, and you hear every little pebble coming off not quite Senna, but GTR, just things like that. When the LFA came out, you're like, it's got nice interior, like it's comfortable to drive, it doesn't beat you up, and it just seemed like a nice all around crazy
I
car.
mean,
And you're right. And then it took off. The value
but
was
then maybe there's an argument. They're like, I was just having a quick look while you were talking. Like, they're about 800 to 1.7 million now.
yeah.
And I guess like a new Ferrari or a Lamborghini Rebalto is kind of like 700,000, 800,000, and they're not necessarily hanging on to their value. So maybe like, is it cooler to get an LFA than get the new Ferrari or the Rebalto? It's not, maybe. But it's just not. I just can't imagine spending like $1 million on an LFA, but then I don't have $1 million to
It's going
spend
to be
on a
tough,
Toyota.
I think the value will hold. It'll plateau, and it could
It
be
will,
there now.
it will, but like, yeah, I mean, F40, what are they? They're just over 1 million now, aren't they? I mean, like, I don't know.
But anyway, I don't know if the new supercar will live up to it. I think that engine and that sound, that V10 is what really put the cherry on top of the cupcake there, if you will.
Yeah.
I just don't know that the V8 hybrid. I'm sure it'll have the performance numbers and all that stuff, and it'll be great. But Are they going to get that sound out of it? Are they going to get that?
It's like I'd love a like a Hurricane, like the old, Lamborghini
Yeah.
Hurricane Bafamante or something, which, was just
Yeah.
that noise. But
I
yeah,
mean,
we'll
I
see. I think
probably,
it's cool that they're doing it again. Lexus has obviously decided that they need to differentiate themselves from Toyota. They need a bit more, they need a bit more glamour.
yeah.
And yeah, it's cool.
I mean, but there was a home run with the LFA, even if it didn't sell all initially. I don't know if it did.
But
Maybe it
I mean,
did.
there was all sorts of talk with that car though when it came out. I think they, if I remember serves, they built a mid-engine prototype and a front-engine prototype, and that was kind of part of the legend. That they basically just spent so much money that they built two cars and picked which was best.
And that something with the carbon fiber, the body or something, they had to use like one of two giant autoclaves that are only available in the world. And I think Lexus
Yeah,
owns it. And it looks like the boring tunnel, like it has this
yeah,
giant round door, like something you could see in a movie, and that's where they have to put the car in to
yeah.
cure the body. It's like it was so over the top.
Till you get whacked by an Uber driver. Yeah,
Right. But if you think about it, it's like everybody was asking for a new great NSX. We got an NSX and it's not trading for $1 million at
no,
Sotheby's.
I think the
And
NSX is a bit
nobody
ridiculous.
asked for an LFA and we got one and it was great and it's trading for $1 million at
Yeah,
Sotheby's, right? Like so now Lexus is going, can we strike lightning twice? Like can we,
yeah.
is there something there? So
And
uh
everything's, if it's going to be a couple of $100,000, well, like I was looking at the 911 Turbo, that's going to be like 300,000. I drove us out at the test track last week. We had an Audi RS3 in, which I was a bit lukewarm about, to be honest. I think our whole team was a little bit lukewarm about just the quality. It did just like the tactile stuff. He just, looked at the price of that 70,000, and you can say, well, it's the cheapest RS. I don't care. It's still 70,000 for what is a
actually
very small, slightly plasticky car.
hold that thought. We're going to take a quick break and we'll be right back. Okay, so the Audi, I meant to ask you about that as well. Yes, the RS, the little one, 70 grand. Yeah, it's the cheapest of the RSs, but you want it to deliver. You want it to deliver the RS performance.
And he
And
does from a performance. Like I was just looking at the numbers we got to test drive, 0 to 60, 3.8 seconds. I mean, that's properly rapid. Quarter mile, 12 seconds. 1G of grip, 75 grand. That's what I think it's going to be. 394 horsepower, and I kind of part of me liked it just because there's just so many cars now which are massive and heavy, and it is kind of it's was it £3,500 or something. It's not. It's kind of lightweight. It's small enough that you can kind of throw it around a little bit. It'd be a fun thing for like scooting around the city in, but.
is
You
it
just got out of it and think that is not. This just doesn't feel like 75 grand's worth of car. Like the interior, it's a bit plasticky inside. It's Audis used to feel so the quality and just the fit and finish and the feel of them was so good, and they've kind of lost their way a little bit. It'd be interesting with like we talked about the new TT, TT concept and things like that.
yeah.
I think they're trying to get back to where they were, but yeah, I just
This is a nice
again.
little car. I don't think I love the look. I just don't
No,
think
it's a
it's
bit
like a
it's a
gorgeous
bit
car.
too kind of like let's bolt another bit on here to make it look like an RS, and we'll stick another bit here that make it look aerodynamic, and it all ends up looking a little bit
Ford Focus.
aftermarket, but not in a cool
It looks
way.
a little Ford Focus to me. Like something in the front, and I don't know, it's just like it's just missing something.
Yeah, and the interior is just a little bit naff for me. Audi used to be about like clean, clean, simple lines, very
Yeah.
elegant. This is just a bit like kind of like fighter control.
Yeah. Although looking at it, it looks like there's some actual buttons.
Yeah, there are some
It's
buttons. Yeah, they're a bit
like you
plasticky,
could
but there are
actually
buttons.
control the AC with some buttons. Yeah, that part's nice. But you're right. This definitely looks like gives you that fighter jet feeling. But that's intentional with with Audi, what they're trying to do here.
Yeah, and I think they're trying to, I think the next generation will start to step away from this and we'll actually see it going a bit more minimalist. And we saw that with the concept. I mean, it's kind of fun to punt around the track, but only to a point. I
Yeah.
can't imagine spending 75 grand on one, that's for sure.
It's funny because we're doing this thing with these cars. We're like, oh, it's so functional and it's a fighter jet and it's got all these different things. And like you you get into something like the Bugatti, and the Bugatti doesn't want you to do any, they don't want you to fuss with
Yeah.
entertainment systems and push all these buttons, and everything's just super clean and gorgeous, and it just looks like an art exhibit, on the interior. And you're just like, it's clean, it's beautiful, it's posh, as you would say, and it's just a beast of a car. But they were just like, just drive the car, just shut up and drive the car.
Well,
Like
like
that's
Rolls-Royce had the same thing, didn't they? That, we're not going to show like rev counter. Well, that's unseemly.
yeah.
It's just, how much power have you got? Enough, plenty, ample. And then what was the and same with audio, isn't it? Like if you get to really high-end audio systems, they don't have all these like graphic equalizers and God knows
Yeah,
what
yeah.
else. It's like, here is the music. This is what the artist intended. This is what we'll reproduce, and it'll sound amazing.
And Bentley too. Bentley, I even like. They're like, see that radio? It's in there because you have to have it, but it's ugly. So we're gonna go ahead and flip
Yeah, that's
that
a that's a
over,
little that's a sweet thing.
so we could flip it and hide it, so you don't have to stare at that damn thing, and you could just hit your steering wheel controls to
Yeah.
change the volume or the radio station, or flip to another station, or skip to a new song. But you don't have to stare at this big black rectangle, this box on your dash if you don't want to. That's kind of nice too. When you see it and you're like, oh, that's a neat trick. Would I ever use it? I'm like, yeah, I would. I
Yeah,
would.
I'd use that. It feels kind of cool. It's
Yeah,
not
it's
just a
pretty
gimmick,
cool.
but this is like a big brand thing, isn't it? Like I know we're planning on talking about it anyway, but I'm driving the Cadillac Lyric V
Yeah,
spec, which is the sports version of the Lyric EV. And Cadillac has obviously made a conscious brand decision that you know we're a bit over the top. Like we're a bit, the Lyriq-V. We're a bit, we are a bit like, I was going to say American. That sounds terrible but we're not going to do like European understatement. We are a bit chintzy. You've got a lot when you get inside. There's like the steering wheel is leather, and then you've got like a kind of faux wood type thing going on. There's just a lot of design. There's a lot of badging. There's a lot of like every piece of badge, every piece of plastic has got some sort of motif on it. I mean, I actually like it. I mean, don't get me wrong. I think it looks, if you're going to do an American luxury brand, then you should embrace the American, the Americana. Don't try and just do, kind of European aesthetic. I actually, it's very in your face, but I actually quite like what they've done.
yeah. Okay.
It's a bit like Genesis, actually. Genesis has done a similar thing. They've said, we're not just, let's lean into the Korean bit, and the Korean bit is a bit more overstated. And Cadillac's doing the same thing. And I think they've done a pretty good job of differentiating it from the Chevy products. There's a lot of shared technology with things like the Blazer EV.
Yeah.
But yeah, I liked it. I mean, 22-inch wheels. And I noticed I pulled up at the stoplight, and there was an old boy in, I forget what car it was, like an old car. He like wound his window down and was like peering at the wheels to see how big they were. I could see what he was doing because they look ridiculous. But it's almost like cartoonish, its proportions, because it's
Is
actually quite a big car.
let me ask you this. Like I'm performance guy. I love the performance variants of pretty much every vehicle out there. But as I drive more EVs, I'm a little bit more inclined to say every EV is pretty quick already. So do I need the high performance variant, or do I go for the longer range? And I just feel like these days for me, I'm more annoyed by not having the range than I am enjoying the performance variant of something. So for me, it's range probably is my pick over high performance. Although I get it though, and like you're saying, if you're a two-car household and this is your daily driver and you don't have to worry about range because you have a short commute, maybe you want the fun, sporty version. But for me, I have one car to drive. I don't know. I kind of wish I had the range.
I mean, I wonder about this car whether, yeah, because what we've seen in some of the range tests, it's not necessarily as clear cut, because it's not like a gas car where it's like always, you're constantly burning fuel even if you're not going quickly. Actually some of the performance ones do maintain a decent range.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit of a different dynamic with the EVs, unless you actually drive them as they're intended, and then of course the whole thing changes, and you just burn through you burn through the power really quickly. You burn through the battery, but like this is 600 plus horsepower. It has makes fake noises, which actually sound okay, but I'm a little bit like, again, it's another one of these that goes so fast. It's like, I'm not sure I care that much. How fast do I need to go? How exciting is it?
Yeah.
I think it's a nice car, but it's like 90,000. The one I've got's like $90,000, and that's an awful lot of money. There's a guy, one of my neighbors has got the Infiniti QX80, which is the huge, like huge seven-seater Infiniti, and he came and looked at the Cadillac, and he's a bit of a car guy, and he said, "This is cool." I said, "Yeah, it's the same price as your Infiniti, basically."
So the range on the Lyriq is like the single motor. They claim the single motor is 326 miles. Actually, I'll bring it up. Let me bring it up on the screen too, so we can take a quick look at it. But so the Lyriq, 326 miles for the single motor, 319 miles for the dual motor. Honestly, not that much of a difference.
Yeah.
I guess uh, there's a couple options on charging, and then the V is 285 miles. So 285 miles, like we're under 300. And of course, you get into the issues with 80% and blah, blah, blah. But are we looking at
But also, I mean, these things are
326
heavy, and you have
versus,
to bear that in mind that, the horsepower therefore becomes what's the power to weight. But, like the single motor's got, what do you got there? Like 365 horsepower or something, which is,
yeah,
plenty.
yeah,
And all right, yeah, and then if you go into the standard all-wheel drive, the dual motor, 515 horsepower, 450 pounds of torque. That's, you know, it's plenty, isn't it?
yeah. Interesting. And then, yeah, so then the
Well,
V,
I'm with you, Mark. I
600
naturally
horsepower.
gravitate to, I'm enthusiastic, naturally gravitate to the performance stuff. But
I mean,
yeah,
look, if
there
you
is a point
said,
where it's like, if I can do 0 to 60 in like 4.5, 5 seconds, like a road car, that's me done.
I mean, I guess we got to look at the numbers, but if you said the single motor was 0 to 60 in 10 seconds and the V was 4 seconds, I'd be like, all right, the V is going to be way more fun.
Yeah.
But is it that much? Is this like still the single motor 0 to 60 in 6 seconds, which still actually feels kind of quick
Yeah, five
versus
to six.
four?
That was.
Like if you're under 6 seconds, it's going to feel quick.
If you like, probably a lot of people listening perhaps haven't actually been in a car recently, does 0 to 60 in like under 4 seconds. It's horrible. Like, it's like, I don't get it wrong. Like, if you're in a race car, it's really exciting. If you're like pulling out of your driveway to go to school, frankly, everybody's going to hate you. It's not, it's exciting to a point, but it's not like real world exciting. It's exciting like you're trying to get home on your own and you're having that bit of fun or whatever. But it's not, it's a pretty brutal experience, especially in an EV where it's all that wallop of torque. It's not a, it's not a, it's not particularly good. It's a, you don't have that old gas thing of like the engine roaring and the tires go, and the wheels spin. They're like, hey, it's not that visceral. So it seems strange to say, but I'm a bit like, okay. I was at Disneyland on Tuesday. Schools were off, and we took the kids to Disneyland. And there was like a roller coaster. And it's unbelievable, like 0 to 55 miles, and did 55 miles an hour in like 3.5 seconds. Feel the incredible G-force. I was like, huh? Tesla I drove here in's faster than that.
Yeah, but when they blow air on you and maybe mist a little water on you, it makes it feel like you're going way
Yeah.
faster, right? Don't they do
But
it
it
in
was funny.
Space
But like
Mountain?
when they
Space
built the
Mountain
roller
moves.
coaster, that was a big deal, right? 0 to 50 in 3.5 seconds.
Like Space Mountain goes like, I don't know, 22 miles an hour, but it's dark and they blow wind on you and it makes it feel like you're doing
Yeah.
80, but you're not, because they're like, how do we simulate the speed, the sensation of speed? But you're right. I drive a big truck and it's 0 to 60 in like 4.2
Yeah.
seconds, whatever the hell the
Uh,
lightning is. Like it's fast. And I do love that the power is there. but because it's a truck, I often have stuff in there. There's a few things in the back seat, the bed of the truck. I've got, stuff back there. And every time I want to jam on it, I'm like, oh, how much stuff is going to go flying around the cabin or the back of the truck? So I have to make sure things are kind of fastened down and stored in cubbies and stuff before I do it. Almost every time I
And
hit
I
the
drive an
accelerator.
old 911
Yeah.
that's got 285 horsepower, does 0 to 60 in these days probably about 5.5 seconds or something if I ever did it, which I wouldn't. Sounds incredible, feels marvelous. Happy days.
Yeah. But when you get in that, you just keep your phone in your pocket, right? You just, now it's,
I got wireless CarPlay. What are you talking about?
yeah. Well, yeah, that's good. But yeah, for me, every time I jam on the accelerator, I hear my phone flying somewhere through the cabin. It either was on the dash or near
Yeah,
the dash, and now it's off the
the,
dash or
the dogs don't like it.
something's flying through the air. All right. So the verdict on the Lyric
No,
V.
they're very like nice. I mean, I think Caddy's generally doing a pretty good job with their EVs. And I think they're doing a good job of differentiating them from the Chevys. It's a nice thing. It's a nice thing at a price. And this is one of the cars we talked about. The ZDX is almost bringing the show full circle. Like, what will that look like in 6 months' time? How many are they going to be selling in 6 months' time? And that'll be the big question. But in isolation, it's a nice way to go around.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I mean, again, when we looked at it, we looked at those numbers. Um, you know, Still a big, heavy vehicle, but not an Escalade, and certainly not the range of the Escalade, the weight of the Escalade, the
Yeah.
size of the Escalade. But what's an Escalade? The EV, it's like $150,000 now. So,
Yeah, and it'll weigh 9,000 pounds plus, I think.
jeez, tough.
Yeah. Don't get hit by one.
Do not get hit by one.
No.
Okay, so before we wrap things up, coming up in the next few weeks, what do you guys got on the docket? Looking anything you're looking forward to that?
Yeah, we got it. Got it. I have a couple of things I can't talk about. Get off down to drive something at the end of next week. So we can talk about probably in a couple of weeks' time. We're just prepping for a new season of Edmunds U Drags, which is very exciting. We haven't done that as the first one this year. We had a bit of a break, but part of it is just getting all the cars together. It's a big effort. We managed to get a good lineup, so that's week after next. Excited about that. Getting back on the road. Got to get the reflexes going again. Yeah, it's a really busy couple of weeks, but
We're,
keeps it
we're,
fun.
we're heading into Q4, the last quarter of the year. So, um, how much work do you guys start when you start focusing all on the end of the year awards, the best of?
That's also coming up.
I
We
know that's
start.
time
We're judging for
intensive.
that sort of judging is already kind of underway. We launch that begin. It's going to be beginning of next year before we launch it, but obviously we create all the assets and go through all that
Yeah.
this year. So yeah, our run up to holiday season is always crazy because we got the UJs coming up, we've got all our award stuff to do, we've got the LA Auto Show. It's so you always get to kind of that Christmas period and you just we try and give people a break and we always have this deal within the team that we work like crazy to give ourselves a little bit of time off and everybody can kind of recharge, but you need it by then.
Yeah. All right. Um, I guess we're gonna wrap things up for today. Yeah, enjoy the lyric. Next week, yeah, I'll have the Lexus, the LC. I don't know which one. 500? LC 500?
Yeah, that's the V8. That's nice.
Yeah, should be nice. All right, guys. Thanks so much for listening. Of course, go to edmunds.com. You can check them out on YouTube as well. And yeah, we're still on social media, I think. I'm still on there. You're still on there. I
Yeah,
haven't.
Weaver on cars. Yeah, picked up a couple of followers this week.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, all right, guys. Thanks so much. Until next time, keep the air in the spare and the bag in the wheel.